It's Friday, Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. Ha, sorry, I'm sitting way back again because Twilight Vampire's son again. I cannot wait to move next month and get past this temporary setup. It is driving me crazy. There's a Swiffer in the background. I don't care. Yeah, it's a mess. You'll notice the bookshelves are possibly empty. I'm packing and I don't know if I'm sick or still fighting off being sick. I'm having trouble breathing today. But the show must go on. I felt really bad about the erratic quality of the content of late. I've been trying to get the Backers episode done for Lady Bits with everything else that's going on. And if I can't breathe, I can't talk that long. So it's really slow going, but I got to get it done so I can take the lights down. It's just going to be against the versus mode, the white backdrop or something like that. It's not going to be the full set because the full set had to be partially dismantled for showing the house. So it's crazy right now. The patrons got more stuff. If you're interested and want to support me, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/Leanna K. It is the primary source of revenue for this channel because YouTube changes their policies the way some people change their mind about what they're going to wear in a given day. But this is about your feedback. I'm going to focus specifically on the Witcher video because some comments were made. It was a best of times, worst of times scenario. First of all, and the U.S. midterms thing, I delve into politics very trepidatiously. I feel like it is part of my mandate because, you know, the culture war has so consumed gaming. And also gamers aren't just interested in games. You guys are very interested in the world around you. And so every once in a while, I want to get away from gaming specific topic and talk about the news of the world because I'm interested in other things. You guys are interested in other things. We don't have to be so narrowly focused. But it is, I don't like to dwell on it. My approach to politics is I have my opinions. Other people have their own opinions. If there's nothing fact-based that we can debate, if the jury's out, if there isn't hard data, an opinion's an opinion. Opinions are like assholes. Everyone has one. Party people have two. Just kidding. But I don't see the need to have a back and forth on things like politics. I think that diversity of opinion is good. I don't agree with this idea that, oh, you have to cave to my way of thinking or you're a bad person. I don't like that when people do that to me. You want to piss me off, you want to push me in the other direction, try to shout me into or bully me into not agreeing with you, but shutting up about my disagreement. That's about the best way to make me louder that I can think of. So why would I try to ram my opinions down anyone else's throats? Now, in the Witcher video, there were some things that people said that were just factually inaccurate, and more than one person said it, and it was among the top comments. So I want to address that because it is counterfactual, and that is something we can talk about. You know, I don't believe in bad opinions, but facts are just facts. And the problem is there's a lot of disinformation out there. And I really dislike the idea that everything's just been labeled fake news, which is, of course, a term that means nothing now, alongside harassment and identity politics. These are terms that now mean nothing. It's just jargon sloganeering that people just fling around to end rational discussion and push things into the realm of emotion. And that drives me crazy. Now, first of all, the positives. A lot of people think thanked me, especially on Twitter, for the sort of the inside baseball analysis of what's going on with this series. Not just my opinions on the various creative choices, which I think I made pretty clear, I think are a dime a dozen, whether I like something or whether I don't like something. That doesn't enrich your life at all. I don't consider that my job. That's lazy. What I can do that other people on YouTube can't do as well is offer informed media analysis, because I have worked in other media. And so I'm glad that you guys like that. I will keep that in mind. Now, there was this comment that things made primarily for men are not as off-putting to the average woman as things made for women are off-putting to the average male. And I see this stuff, and it's at least one person who said this has been watching my content for a long time. Now, granted, I'm not sure, because one of these people seem to disagree with everything I say. I don't know if this person is trying to convert me or to their attitudes or what, but this is a topic that has been another thing that has been ruined by jargon. This whole idea of women being more willing to watch stuff for men than men are willing to watch stuff for women, because things women like are inherently off-putting. This has been co-opted by male gaze theory, which I believe is extremely flawed when it comes to gaming. And I think that the term has been so applied to places it doesn't belong, and the idea that the male gaze is somehow inherently evil, I find it no longer productive. So I'm going to talk about this without using gaze theory, because gaze theory, going back to Jacques Lacan, it's part of the existentialist movement. It's highly theoretical. There's been very little way to prove it. Let's stick to data. What we do know is that historically, public spaces, as of the Greeks and Romans, became male spaces. Women were kept behind closed doors for our own protection, because if you're playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey like I do, you're reminded that the Greeks were often in a constant state of war. So women were kept behind closed doors. The public spaces were male. The professional spaces were male. Currency was designed for transactions taking place outside of your home base. So the further away job took you, the more important currency became. Men were the traders. Women tended to be civic administrators back in the day. And so currency became intertwined with the male experience. And then certain things that were considered women's work, like baking, was the big one. The Romans made baking something you could make money and prestige at. And so when you think of a baker, you think of a man. And yet we see cooking as woman's work. This is one of these contradictions that we don't tend to consider enough as society. What's the difference between a baker and mom at home cooking dinner, the Betty Crocker trope? You get paid to be a baker, whereas housewife cooking was unpaid work. Same goes for things like hairdressing and things like that. The top, the most famous hairdressers are men. Vidal Sassoon, Mark Anthony, people like that. They're all men. Name a famous female hairdresser. And that is counterintuitive, just because glamour and beauty are associated with femininity. But to get paid for it, masculine sphere, okay? Now, this is really important to understanding why women grin and bear it on guy stuff and men feel the license, the social license to reject female stuff, female sphere stuff. And by masculine and feminine, I don't mean biological sex, I mean gender. This is an indication where they are different. There is no evidence anywhere that women don't like action. Violence and action are not the same thing, but women don't like action and men don't like romance. The question is, how socially acceptable is it to admit that you like these things? And they're actually finally doing like direct brain scan studies of various things. No surprise, a lot of it has to do with sex. And what they're no, I'm not going to link to it, and no, because I'm not going to link to a single study, because single studies mean nothing in science. This is something that drives me crazy about internet discourse and this citation please garbage. A single study tells you nothing. You have to replicate the findings of a study, and too much junk has been put into the popular consciousness because individual studies like that 1 in 4 women have been victims of sexual assault. That was 2 bloody college campuses, and it was self-reported, and the definition of sexual assault was very broad. This is an example, but people just get it and they quote 1 in 4, 1 in 4, 1 in 4, whereas other studies have shown that the number is more like 1 in 6, which is, wow, exactly the same as men. The perpetrators of that sexual assault are far more likely to be men, so men are abusing boys as well as women. But victims, it might be completely, equal opportunity offender. It might be that women are in fact more, but there's an example of, if we see, rape myth is that women are uniquely likely to be raped. If that doesn't actually match the statistics, that's why it's called rape myth. But what's the big difference? Well, the difference is women are empowered to talk about it by our culture and men aren't. Well, this is true of a lot of things that are seen as women's stuff. The minute something is defined as women's stuff, then men feel like they can't either admit to liking it or can't share their experiences as similar, because of the fact that our society, going back to the Greeks and Romans, women were the weaker sex, and honor and bravery and masculinity were so prized that men were not given the ability to admit that they were into girl stuff. Now, granted, in the ancient Greek world, men were given much more license to be emotionally demonstrative. If you didn't cry at someone's funeral, people thought you didn't care in some city-states. It wasn't the stoicism that was popularized pretty much with the Great Wars, with World War I and World War II, the whole keep calm and carry on thing. That's a relatively recent development in terms of stoicism's a Greek concept, but yeah, this idea that don't show emotion, it's bad, that hasn't been consistent throughout human history. So is it true that men are much more uncomfortable with being exposed to the feminine sphere than women are being exposed to the male sphere? Yes, that's true. Is this natural or biological? No, there's absolutely no evidence of that. Part of it is that in the 70s and 80s, women's empowerment, women's lib encouraged women, the pantsuit is the metaphor for, you want to get ahead in business, act like men. Toughen up, suck it up, ladies. Self-defense courses, encouraging women to be violent, get in touch with anger, all that stuff. Move it into the masculine sphere. Why? Because you have to compete. And the business world, because of the history of currency, has been structured all along what is presumed to make men comfortable, masculine social norms. So yes, women have been actively trained to adapt to male stuff. Now, that gives women like me, who are not gender typical, a bit more of an advantage in other spheres. But what they don't tell you is There's no guarantee you won't be punished for acting unfeminine. Oh, wow, I wish I knew that. Because it's true. So you can't win for losing. Now, there's a certain flip side to that is true of men as well. The idea that if a man, for instance, really likes kids and wants to be an early childhood educator, he is subject to a lot of stigma because people, including women, think that's weird. There must be something deviant about you if you would choose to work with children. And that's not right either. That's a serious social problem. Our sex roles are too rigid. And my big concern with this push for the rigid definitions of genders, gender identity, and sexuality is that we're actually making our normative sex roles more rigid instead of opening them up and not having masculinity and femininity and a lack of association with either connected to this idea of rigid likes and dislikes, this rigid idea of normalcy. And I really do believe that some of this is social science gone amok. And I think it is extremely important to work towards equal dignity and equal accessibility for intersex and transgender individuals. I also think we put far, far too much emphasis on sex role associations of likes and dislikes and natural behaviors. We are very much unlike other animal species where there is intense sexual dimorphism regarding behaviors. We are extremely complex as a species. We cannot take anything for granted. And so while one may observe that men seem notably uncomfortable in going to romance movies, while women seem much more comfortable going to action films, there's two things going on there. First of all, there's a greater expectation for women to get along and be agreeable and support the movies that the men in their lives want to see. Not as much pressure on men. It's the opposite pressure. It's the opposite. Be disagreeable. Romance. You know. But when you actually think about these action movies, take the Captain America movies, for instance. There's a heavy romance. It's not even a subplot. It's the great finale. The finale of the film is this big romantic moment. And yeah, he's in a plane and I won't spoil it, but if you haven't seen the movie, it's a good movie because it's also a Steve McQueen homage. And I'm sitting there going, yeah, every time they do like an homage to The Great Escape or something like that, I'm like, yes, 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 yes. And then I try to talk to people about the Steve McQueen homages and people are like, people aren't aware of Steve McQueen movies anymore. What is going on with this world? They're classics. That's not a normal female response. But Haley Atwell is everything in that movie, right? It is so critical to the center of it. And when you think about the superhero movies that have done really well versus the superhero movies that haven't done very well, a lot of the miscasting comes around. I mean, Henry Cavill and Amy Adams both, well, Amy Adams is a very good actor. Henry Cavill, in my opinion, is a mediocre actor. He was a really good Superman, though. They just had no chemistry. Same with Kate Bosworth and Brendan Routh in that Superman movie. Parker Posey should have been Lois Lane. But, you know, the Chris Reeve and Margot Kidder, Superman and Lois, bam. And how did they audition Lois Lane for that? That scene, the Peter Pan balcony scene with Do You Like Pink? They considered that intrinsic to making that movie work because the action movies are actually not for guys and women are okay with that. There is a lot more for women in action movies, in mass market action movies. than there is for men in romance movies. Then you get into films that are hybrids of the two. There is a lot of large R romanticism in The Lord of the Rings, for instance. And the people that talk about the fact that, there is a lot more for women in these movies are absolutely right. So it doesn't really seem, when you look at the evidence, it doesn't seem like men are repelled by romance. Because if they were, they wouldn't like these action movies that have mass appeal. It's more that they're not including more general purpose stuff in things like rom-coms. Now, there's another element to this that I think is also really important. It's that self-fulfilling prophecy thing of Hollywood. Before Wonder Woman, and it still persists to this day, but there was this belief that movies with female leads didn't make as much money. So they didn't put as much money into them. Rom-coms are basically associated with crap, and they're smaller budget. They have less marketing, and less marketing means there's less going on to make it cool that everybody should want to see these films. It's just sort of like word of mouth and maybe some ads on the Hallmark Channel or something like that. I don't know. That was just a joke. I don't get the Hallmark Channel. The whole idea of the Hallmark Channel gives me a rash. But how do I put this? This is something that I had to stop doing because it was wrong. Crapping on sex-typical female preferences is wrong. And I realized I was being an insensitive jerk and not helping in the quest for equality for all women, because female preferences are just as valid as male ones. Unfortunately, society does not treat them the same way. By the time kids are about 4 to 6 years old, they start into that sex role separation. I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with having definition of boy, definition of girl. The problem is there's this thing that happens at that age where boys go, ew, that's a girl thing. And girls go, ew, that's a boy thing. Now, what's wrong with that if you've been following along? Well, the business world is socialized male. So if women cut off from boy things early in life, that boy socialization, they're going to have a lot harder time in the business world because the business world is socialized male. Now, we should be easing off on that girls are icky, boys are icky kind of thing, finding a happy medium with that. But we also have to recognize that the working world should be for everybody, including sex atypical men and sex typical women. So this idea that, oh, men just don't like that stuff. Women are more comfortable with it. That's, first of all, there's nothing to back that up. It's a completely unscientific opinion. Second of all, it's completely unhelpful. Like, basically the logic is, well, men don't like the things that women like, and women don't like the things that men like, but women dislike less the things men like than men dislike the things women like. So we should just make more stuff for men. The status quo makes complete sense. Move on. We have to change nothing. The problem is in the business world, like, big deal. So what? Maybe it's true. The thing is, it's not true because entropy is a real thing in business. There's no such thing as just coasting. In business, you either grow or you shrink. You get a certain natural loss of your customer base, and unless you actively bring more people in, people just, they don't have the money to do it anymore. Their lives change, whatever. You have to continue to bring in new blood. And the problem with a lot of these male dominated industries, because as I was talking about, for years, all media was, geared towards 18 to 34-year-old men. That market's saturated. They have as many men, white men in there as they're going to get. Now they have to start bringing in other types of people. And the problem with media is media doesn't know how. And so when they try to, women like this crap, right? They do a bad job. That's why it's really important to have directors like Patty Jenkins who aren't going to go in there and see the female stuff as inherent crap. Because that's a bad bias that, Hollywood has. And right now we live in a world, just as an example of the larger point in microcosm, people are going to argue, nitpick the crap out of this. You know what? I don't care because I don't have to do feedback on Feedback Friday. But example, Ubisoft has said the default, the canon experience in Assassin's Creed Odyssey is Cassandra, the woman, but it's still Alexius on the box. It's only the man on the box, front and back, because presumed male preference is normalized. And I don't get why they think presumed male preference is you have to put the guy on the box, because Cassandra's hot as shit as far as I'm concerned. And a lot of guys would rather see this like hot woman on the box than just another guy, like a 300 wannabe, literally. That's marketing fear. And the default experience is the female one, but we put the guy on the box. You're not advertising what people are actually going to get when they buy the game. And it's true. The Cassandra, I'm seeing what they mean about her sort of being the default experience. There's certain things that just work better as her. She's so much more refreshing a character as well. Now, that is partially because I don't like Alexius's voice acting. I just don't. That weird kind of, I'm going to make a big deep voice thing the voice actors do. I don't dig it. Weird direction. Weird. But as long as we live in a world where game marketers feel the need to continue putting the guy on the box and then wonder why fewer people don't play as the guy, well, you're attracting people who want to play as a male ancient Greek person instead of either or a female ancient Greek person. The art within the game, the title screen, has both of them. I don't know why they couldn't have used that image. I'm sure there were plenty of internal meetings about that. I still think it's the wrong answer. Because you're never going to find out how that works, whether people are going to accept or reject it, until you try it. And I really don't think box art sells games anymore. I know when I go into EB Games, I'm buying based on what I've seen of the game. And that looks cool. Whoa, the picture's amazing. I'm going to get that. That's not how... Is that how you buy games? Have you ever bought a game because you thought the box art was cool? I think the closest I've ever come to that is The Darkness. But I was already aware of the comic at that point. I hadn't read the comic, but I was aware of the character at least, and I knew a bit what it was about. And I'd seen gameplay demos, so the box art was reminding me of that. It's not like when you used to go buy comics off a newsstand and that Silver Age, oh no, Superman is dead. It's like, what happened? I have to know. What was it back then? About $1.80. It's a lot more than that now, but it was like $1.80 back then. That's far less risky an impulse buy than a game. So let me know, have you ever bought a game just based on the box art? Planescape Torment. Planescape Torment was the last game I bought because of the box art. I knew nothing about that game, but it was a face, right? It was something compelling about the Nameless One's face. That is the last game I bought based on box art. And what was that? 1999, 2000 or something like that? Let me know if you ever bought a game based on box art. Okay, thanks for watching.